Hey everyone, welcome back to OBS 369. This is the last unit of this course on global operations and supply chain management, which I've kept very short. I only want you to focus on the concepts I'm going through in this presentation, using the textbook to delve deeper into each, and you may skip over what I don't mention. In an international context, firms may develop a competitive advantage in a number of ways. In previous units, we stumbled upon some of these ways, such as 1. The standardization of the marketing mix to achieve cost savings, and 2. The customization of the products to the local needs of foreign markets, which leads to a unique and differentiated product. I hope you remember this. International companies can also achieve a competitive advantage by streamlining their operations internationally, which leads them to greater efficiency and effectiveness in their global operations. Broadly speaking, a competitive advantage in global operations may be achieved by, for instance, 1. Making improvements to existing operations. For example, when you find ways to produce at a faster rate. 2. Opening new or transferring existing operations abroad. This is when you move production to foreign locations where labor costs are lower. 3. Finding alternative outside sources of inputs. So when you, for example, find a supplier that sells the same component you need, but at a lower cost. And the 4th way is through outsourcing. You contract out the manufacturing of your products to an independent firm. And if you remember, this is what Nike does, for example, where they don't produce their own clothes. They contract that out through contract manufacturing, and then they mostly focus on their marketing. An international company's global operations are, strictly speaking, the activities it performs, which are illustrated in its value chain. This is an example of a value chain. So all the activities that are present here are the activities performed by any firm, an international company too. But when we speak of the supply chain, we have to look at a much broader range of activities. The activities involved in transforming the product from raw materials stage up to when it reaches the consumer. That's the supply chain, and this involves suppliers, distributors, all the way up to customers. Therefore, we have to include the activities performed by these other partners in the supply chain, suppliers and distributors. Now, this is an example of a supply chain. In this example, there are 4 firms involved, not just one firm. There is a supplier, there is a manufacturer, a distributor, and a retailer. Your firm may be the manufacturer or the distributor, or may carry out more than one activity. For instance, when you manufacture and you also distribute the product. So that's the supply chain. The supply chain is the activities involved in producing a firm's products and services, and how these activities are linked together. Now, supply chain management is the coordination and integration of all the activities of the supply chain, irrespective of whether they're performed by your firm or by independent firms. So as I was saying, there are 4 firms involved in the supply chain management, but at any point in any supply chain, you may have 4 independent firms, or you may find that one firm is carrying out the activities of all 4. It depends. When we take supply chain management to an international level, there are 2 major considerations to be made. One is who should be responsible for which activity. In other words, which activities should I perform in-house, and which activities should be outsourced to independent companies. This decision is usually based on evaluation of who has more competence in performing a specific function and at what cost. And the second important decision is where each activity should be located. It's also important to select the appropriate location of, let's say, your suppliers. Here we shouldn't just look at which location offers the best cost advantage, but also issues of how long it takes to complete the production of the product. because time to market is also a source of competitive advantage. So we could ask ourselves, for instance, who could be the supplier in this value chain? Should the international company produce its own supplies, what we call vertical integration, or should it purchase supplies from an independent firm, what we call outsourcing? Also, should the production, the manufacturing, the figure above, be located close to the customer, or rather in a country with low labor costs? And these are important decisions, whether you are going to give priority to cost and therefore maybe locate your supplier or production in a place where labor costs are low, input costs are low, or do you want them closer to you so as to improve the time to market of your products? Zara, for instance, has made the bold decision to keep in-house the activities of design, manufacturing, distribution, what we also call outbound logistics, and sales, their shops. While most of its competitors in the clothing industry outsource manufacturing to independent contractors in Asia and also outsource sales to third parties through a franchise system. And even though Zara's solution is more costly, it may seem so, the firm is able to save costs elsewhere. For instance, the tightly linked activities of design, manufacturing, and distribution enable the firm to have lower levels of inventory and to deliver a new collection of clothes to any shop around the world in just 2 weeks. Inventory is an expensive item on financial statements, so this system does bring significant cost savings to Zara. Its product's time to market is also a source of competitive advantage that competitors don't possess. But now let's look more closely at how a competitive advantage may be created through supply chain management. Supply chain management can create a competitive advantage in the form of cost savings at the level of product or service design, procurement, logistics, and operations. Now, these are the main areas I want you to focus on for the rest of the unit and what you're going to read in your textbook if you go to it, and I hope you do, because you need to dive deeper in the concepts so that you can apply them in case studies should they come up. In each of these activities, international companies attempt to streamline operations along the supply chain and to achieve their standardization as much as possible. This enables them to enjoy cost savings, as we will see. So once again, standardization is one of the possible objectives because it brings cost savings, whereas customization is not a cost-saving solution, but it brings other types of competitive advantage, such as differentiation. But let's see how one can possibly achieve standardization in product and service design. When we spoke about the marketing mix of international companies in Unit 5, we saw how a standardized product brings about economies of scale and economies of learning in production, and thus cost savings. And we also saw how the type of products, foreign environmental forces, and the degree of market penetration, these three factors, influence whether we can standardize the product or not. Can the product in question be standardized? This depends on the three factors just mentioned above, but in the production design phase, international companies may use different approaches to better understand if they can create a standardized product. So we have these three factors that influence standardization, customization. This is from Unit 5. And now at the product and service design phase, we want to understand better, can we come up with a standardized product, because this will bring cost savings and we're interested in that. So there are four approaches that can be followed at the design phase. One is called the over-the-wall approach. This is a sequential approach to product design, whereby product designers design the product and send it to the firm's manufacturing engineers, who then study the feasibility of manufacturing of the new product and eventually make the modifications necessary for optimal production. So it happens in sequence from designers to engineers and eventually then the product is finalized and produced. The second approach is cross-functional participation. With this approach, a team of specialists from different functions, design, production, marketing, finance, etc., is created. And the specialists work together on the new product, contributing their own specialist perspective to the product design phase. So, for example, the finance guy will put their input into whether the new product will be cost effective, and the marketing people will speak about maybe the presence of cultural differences that don't allow for product standardization and so on. A third approach is to involve key customers. In fact, some international companies, especially those more sensitive to customers' needs, involve key customers in the product design phase. This ensures that the new products that they launch are in line with what customers want. And obviously, this approach may lead to a new product that is customized to the local needs of customers and not to a standardized product across regions. And the fourth approach is to solicit very broad input, for example, from the general public, to give their opinion about key elements of a new product. There could be, for example, an anonymous survey that is carried out at different points of sale, such as shops, to random shoppers. And these random shoppers are asked about their opinions on a new product idea. Now we move to the most important part of this unit, which is procurement, sourcing globally. The most important focus area of supply chain management we are going to look at in an international context is precisely procurement, which is the sourcing of raw materials and inputs for the production process. Why do firms start sourcing globally, which means to find suppliers of raw materials located in foreign countries? There are three main reasons. The first reason could be that they may be able to obtain lower prices from a supplier located overseas. Suppliers located in regions of the world where the raw materials they are supplying are found in greater abundance, or where labor costs are lower, are able to charge lower prices. Second reason may be that certain inputs required for the production process are not available locally. For instance, fashion brands in Europe who sell handbags may have to source crocodile skin for their handbags from other parts of the world, such as Africa. And finally, a reason for sourcing globally could be that inputs of better quality are found overseas. For firms who build a reputation on product quality and whose competitors have better quality inputs, it is imperative to source the best quality raw materials, irrespective of the location of suppliers. In the fashion industry, for instance, top quality silk is sourced from Far East Asia, and some of the best quality leather products are manufactured in Italy. How can an international company go about sourcing inputs globally? What are the arrangements available? There are five main arrangements. The first two are equity-based, meaning that the international company has an investment into this arrangement. The remaining three are non-equity based, which means that the international company buys inputs from an independent firm under slightly different arrangements. So let's look at them in turn. Under the equity-based ones, we have the arrangement of a wholly owned subsidiary, whereby the international company sets up its own subsidiary in a country that is appropriate for the sourcing of the inputs it requires, either because of lower costs or because inputs are only available from that country, or again because of better quality inputs in that country, as we've seen. This would be the case if, for example, Starbucks were to set up its own coffee farms, 100% owned, in the Ivory Coast of Brazil, which would supply all of Starbucks coffee shops around the world with coffee beans. The second equity-based arrangement is called overseas joint venture. In this case, the international company would establish a subsidiary in a convenient foreign location, but sharing ownership with another local partner, or international partner for that matter. This would be the case if Starbucks and Mug and Bean were to set up jointly owned coffee farms in the Ivory Coast. Then the three non-equity based arrangements, which are basically outsourcing arrangements. We are contracting out a third party to supply us with inputs under slightly different arrangements. The first one is the inbound plant contractor. The supplier is responsible for the assembly of product components for the international company. It receives the components from the international company, assembles them, and sends them back to the international company. It is usually located in a free trade zone where labor costs are also low. Then we have the overseas independent contractor, whereby the international company outsources the production of its goods to an independent firm located overseas. This is the case of Nike, for example. And here, once again, it could be mainly due to low labor costs. And the third and last one is the independent overseas manufacturer, similar to the above, but in this case, inputs are not produced according to the international company specifications. This is perhaps the simplest arrangement, and an example would be Ocean Basket buying fish from different locations around the world for its various restaurants. Even though global sourcing may bring cost savings, international companies need to consider some added costs, which may make it not such a cost-wise solution. The first added cost is international shipping, which is basically the added cost of bringing the inputs from the foreign location to where production is located. This may include freight, insurance, import tariffs, etc. The second one is exchange rate fluctuation, because many international purchases happen in the foreign currency of the foreign supplier, or even in a third currency, such as US dollars. The final price paid by an international company whose home currency is different will be subject to the exchange rate applicable at the time of purchase. There are also issues with delivery times. Having the source of inputs in another country creates added difficulties in terms of delivery times. The time of purchase and delivery needs to be studied carefully in order to still deliver the final product in time to consumers. Moreover, in case of non-equity global sourcing arrangements, the international company depends on an independent supplier to deliver the inputs in time, which is an added risk. And fourth, if the international company is sourcing inputs globally making use of an e-platform, then there may be challenges in integrating this electronic system with the rest of the firm's more traditional systems. And also in e-procurement, there is a lot of sharing of company data on the e-platform, which brings with it issues of security of company data. Some international companies then may figure out that the added costs of global sourcing do not outweigh the cost savings in the purchase of inputs. For instance, Zara doesn't source globally because it values more the gain in delivery times and greater control of the supply chain that it has by having local suppliers located closer to its production facilities. This may be more costly in terms of the cost of raw materials, but in this, Zara saves money by cutting inventory, which is a costly item. Short delivery times are also one of the main sources of Zara's competitive advantage, so this choice is in line with their strategy. Finally, a few considerations about global operations. Here we refer to a situation where the manufacturing process follows standard procedures in all of the international companies' plants around the world. Remember the issue of standardization? So how do we achieve standardization in global operations? Well, it's usually mainly through the implementation of standard procedures. The more standardized operations are, the higher the cost savings, such as having smaller staff of support personnel needed because production processes and procedures are the same across subsidiaries. It is also easier for headquarters to keep the production specifications current, as they are all standardized across subsidiaries, so that any updates in production specifications apply across the board. It is also possible to divide production among the firm's various plants around the world. This manufacturing strategy, called manufacturing rationalization, allows each production plant to specialize in the production of a few components, thus also achieving economies of scale. Additionally, in the case of a standard product and standardized operations, the international company's purchasing department can buy supplies in bulk for all its subsidiaries, thus being able to enjoy quantity discounts. Two additional points. When production equipment is standardized, quality control is easier and less costly because all subsidiaries are supposed to adhere to the same standard. And finally, monitoring of the production rate of machinery is easier when machinery is the same across subsidiaries and maintenance thereof is less costly. And with this, we've ended this unit. As I said, I wanted to keep it very short. Just go and look deeper into the concepts I've mentioned. And if there is anything you don't understand, please contact me. I'm always available. Enjoy.